Failed World, page 26 through 50. Now vowed to himself, "You will redeem your children." Now didn't know how, but he'd used the fire inside him to be strong. His motivation burned bright from thinking of what his heart knew must be done if there would be any good left in the failed world. Now felt for the first time a responsibility that was deep in his core. This feeling only grew with the great sense of a need to redeem his own evil decisions that did nothing but delay the inevitable. In hindsight, Nal knew that he would have been cursed no matter what kind of clever scheme he thought up. He had to face the consequences of his drunken actions, which caused his tyrant mother to have the whole world trying to kill him, all for fathering children. Nal was forced to go down a lonely path. Hobnal's father was living like a wild animal. Communication was difficult. After going through endless miles of rough wilderness, the thickness of plant life no longer frightened Nal. When he began his escape, Nal was scared of being away from all he knew in the city. He knew that outside of the great city, there was nothing structured, with only primitive landscapes and ways of life for the people who chose to live outside of the great city. The place where his mother Aknal ruled was a city unlike any other on earth. This new paradise covered land as big as the Middle East or more. All Nal knew of the outside world was what the people of the great city told him. His mother Aknal filled his head with things as a child that painted a picture of the failed world being harsh and cruel, which was a reflected projection of the ugliness inside that she created within her own city, which she ruled and helped create. Although there were nothing but wicked people all over the failed world, doing all sorts of terrible things to each other, the landscapes were often beautiful, mixed with the strangeness of unfamiliarity. To Nal, the truth of the failed world was being revealed for itself. When he became acquainted with the outside lands, Nal started to relax, growing comfortable with his surroundings. At this time, he would find Hav, his father, who went insane. The sight of his father pained Nal. To see Hav reduced to a frantically manic, animalistic man living in the deep wilderness was difficult for Nal to see. Nal understood the meaning of evil that day. He knew that cruelty was the basis of wickedness and learned of the importance of good. Nal was saddened to know that from the beginning, the generation before him chose to abandon good. Therefore, the creator of the first people let their world fail. The plan of their creator was ruined. Nal understood that he never had a chance other than to endure the wickedness of those who came before him. Although Nal's father was among the least evil of the first people, since he had only done one truly wicked thing by carrying out a horrendous murder as an accomplice, Hav still made that conscious decision to go through with that malice, so he paid dearly. Nal was standing in the middle of closely bunched trees that had leaves unlike anything on earth. These were layered on the branches, giving complete darkness for shade, which let no light in from the sun. The branches were tied together in knots by the way they naturally grew, all closely together, just like how the trees themselves grow into each other naturally. Wherever these trees grew made it difficult to find a path through them. This made the best place to hide. If you could find a path in the middle of them, it was like finding treasure, being able to understand the lifeline of these plants. On this hidden path in the middle of these peculiar plants was the stream of water that was protected by the trees themselves. They nourished each other along with rare fish that only lived next to these types of plants. These fish had no color, but reflected images of whatever was around them off their scales. There was an abundance of the mirror fish, just like how there were a lot of these particular plants, but only in these rare types of environments spread out across the failed world, which were hard to find. This was due to surrounding environments that created particular conditions needed to sustain such wildlife. Only in the most dark, isolated parts of the hotter areas of the failed world could the cool pockets be created where this type of life would thrive. This was a unique environment that allowed rare elements in the air, which caused different types of plant and wildlife to grow all around each other in ways not seen on Earth. Now had a thought while making his way through the darkness of the deep wilderness, under the dark shade of the peculiar plants, so he vocalized this thought, saying to the thick limbs of the trees, "Could you open up for me to give me some light?" The trees listened. They opened up directly above him, causing Now to stop in his tracks to look up at this amazing thing. Now heard a mumbling to the right of him, but passed it off as his mind playing tricks on him after seeing such a strange phenomenon. So Now ignored the sound that resembled the mumbling of an old man and decided to keep going forward through the deep wilderness. The trees kept opening up their branches just above him and closed up behind him where they once shed light. Now couldn't believe that nature itself was so kind. "Thank you." Now looked up again while slowly moving forward through the magnificent plant life. He could feel the life within them as the limbs graciously moved above. Now didn't know what love was before that day, in that personal moment between the simpleness of the trees in that deepest of wilderness. He never knew what this kind of appreciation felt like, and began to feel his eyes well up with tears that came down his face as he walked along. The coolness of the air in that little pocket of dense plant life felt refreshing to his face, like a cleansing now needed his whole life. He felt grateful for these simple things, which were not simple at all to Now in his time of need, becoming intimate with nature. Now thought deeply in that deep wilderness, thinking about how thankful he really was for such blessings he did not know existed in this damned world of his. He thought that if God abandoned him, then how could the essence of his good-natured Creator bless him like this? Now knew that the Creator was in all things, and this changed his perspective right then and there, which was reversing everything he ever knew. His mother and everyone in the city where he lived his whole life taught Now wrongly, even though it was true that their Creator left the world to destroy itself. Still, as long as Now was alive, knowing he had children that were a part of him, Now knew there was potential for good to live on, as long as there was a world to live in. It was sad to know his world was doomed, but as long as it existed, Now decided in those days to never give up on doing good and righting the wrongs he made. If Now could lift the curse of his mother and those of the generation before him, then at least he could do some good with the life that was given to him, and teach his children good things in the evil failed world. Thinking about these things, now was disturbed again by the unmistakable sound. This time there was no mistaking the noise. No doubt it was there and nothing else. It was not the natural sounds of his surroundings, but indeed a man. Now found his father driven insane by the circumstances of his banishment. Hav looked like he was missing any composure he once had, with a wild look in his eyes, as he had become wild. "Now, I know you hear me," Hav spoke to his son in the darkness beside him. "Father, I thought I heard something but wasn't sure," Nal explained. "I don't know how long it's been since I've spoken words aloud. Time has passed me by unkindly." Hav expressed his first thoughts without mercy. "It seems as though much more time has passed than what I was aware of. I also don't know how long I've been out here since I made my escape," Nal admitted. "Then it's true. You've left on your own accord," Hav declared. "Not exactly. I was forced to leave unless I wanted to be killed. I'd rather die in the wilderness than by the hands of another." Nal let his father know the truth. "You've become banished like me, but under what circumstances? I've been out here for so many days, it is impossible for me to count. What has happened?" Hav asked. "It must have been a dream, but I thought I told you. I must have dreamed about telling you. I am a father to many. 7 women declared to Mother that they've undoubtedly raised children who belong to none other than me. It happened in my drunkenness," Nal said in his shame, hiding nothing from his father. "Many more days have passed than you realize. I've grown crazy out here, but I knew when I saw you that you've grown much older. These things could not have just happened a few years ago, but many years have passed. Your face shows me that it is you, but much older than what I remember." Hav made a stunning remark to his son. "How can this be, father? I know that your circumstances have driven you to madness, as would any man suffer to endure." Nal sympathized, but was stopped. "Son, there is no basis for argument. I am driven insane by all that has been done to me. I cannot deny. I also cannot deny what I see before me. My son has grown old," Hav said, then took Nal by the hand and pulled him over to the silver water. The sacred water that flowed through those trees revealed more than the fish, which were the secret life source of the plant life there. Nal saw his reflection clearly as the light shone perfectly from above in the darkness to reveal Nal's aged image. He was nearly twice the age he imagined himself to be. Nal wandered through the wilderness for a lifetime and didn't notice, while pondering the terrible things of his life. "This is not how I remember. I have memories, clear memories of meeting you in the wilderness and speaking to you about these things. I don't know why this is happening. Now I wonder if it were only dreams I had many times over the years convincing myself otherwise. Maybe I am growing as insane as you've been made to be," Nal admitted, but after saying this, he thought how strange it was, being able to talk to his father at all, understanding his words so clearly, when this was not possible last time they talked. "I say it is natural for you to feel this way. Your mind has created things in such a way to protect you while you've suffered alone all this time. You have suffered in your own way, just like I have suffered in my own way that's completely different from your personal experience. Never mind all that. We've been brought together for a reason, and it is clear to me. You were talking to my friends, and they showed you that they're listening. Hav was talking about the trees opening up their branches to his son's request. Your friends? The trees? Nal asked, looking cautious as a child. Not just the trees, not just the plants. What's inside them, just like the animals and the others. Hav confused his son right when Nal thought he was beginning to understand. Others? Like other people? Have you made contact with other people, father? Nell asked out of curiosity. Not like us. I don't know what to call them or it. That's why I just said others. Hav did his best to explain something he knew his son was not yet going to understand. Can you show me what you mean? Can you show me these others? Nell asked. Yes, I can tell that you've already interacted with them just as I. This is why I decided to call out to you. I've been following you for a long time now, but waited until you had the breakthrough, such as I did before you, Hav confessed. Why would you do that? We could have talked much sooner then, if you spotted me long ago, as you say. I don't understand why you would do that, Nal wondered. I had to make sure that you could have the same experience, or else we'd never be able to connect in the way the others need. You're going to understand, don't worry. Come along. My friends are waiting to help you, see? Hav looked above at the opened tree limbs that waited to close back up once walking continued. The trees did wait for Nal and his father with patience. They waited to keep doing what they were doing, what they were asked to do. Once again, friends proved themselves, showing their friendliness to Nal and Hav. As they moved along by the silver water, following the fish where they swam to, the estranged father and son were guided by the light above that their plant friends gave. Nal was confused about many things, but glad. I feel different. I feel that I have significantly changed, Nal told his father. That's because you have. Be thankful that you have not changed the same way I have, Hav's voice carried in a different way behind his son now. The whole tone felt different in Nal's ears as he walked ahead of his father for quite some time along the stream of silver water. Before he knew it, they had walked through the thickest part of the deep wilderness and made their way to a very special place. There was a simple house there across the silver water, and a farm with lots of fruits and vegetables being harvested. Along with the wonderful surprise that definitely was a blessing, there was another sight that Nal did not immediately recognize or understand. Nal noticed that he was right in front of the oldest looking tree of its kind that led him there. At the foot of the tree was what looked like the shape of a body, like a man. Nal looked behind him to ask his father what this was, but Hav was gone. He then crouched down to examine this odd sight and saw that it was his father. Hav had died there a long time ago and decomposed into the plant life. This was not a rotten sight and did not look bad. Hav's remains were beautifully covered with moss. This shade of green and texture covering the long dead body of Nal's father gave a kind of life to it that Nal could not ignore. He knew that his father guided him there, and that the trees indeed were their friends who helped. He couldn't explain it to himself any other way. Nal was thankful to have had this experience, and everything made sense then after. Nal didn't know what a supernatural experience was, but that was exactly what he had. The spirit of Nell's father was connected to nature in a special way due to the bond made in the wilderness for all of those years. Nell was about to learn why he was led there, and that the reason was much more special and important than he could imagine. I wish I could still talk to you, Father, Nell spoke to the remains before he stood. Still crouching down with his hands on his knees, Nell hardly began to lift himself up when he felt the slight coolness of air from a breeze that touched him. The coolness gave him a chill that was pleasant, and it was like the spirit of his father assured him that he was with him. Even the open tree limbs bowed down in accordance with this, just as Nell looked up at them when he rose to his feet just as this happened. The young man who lived on the farm in that simple little house heard Nell's voice but wasn't sure of exactly what was said. This young man lived there alone and came out to see exactly what he heard, wondering if it indeed were a voice like he thought. Nell did not see the young man standing out there in front of his home. He stopped and stood there, looking at Nell. Nell was caught looking up at the open limbs of the trees. The young farmer was amazed to see such a thing that he himself had never experienced. "I thought I heard a voice. How'd you do that?" The farmer scared Nell when he asked. "Oh, I don't know what to say. I've been traveling through the wilderness for a long time." Nell said the only words that came to mind, which made a lot more sense than he first realized. "I don't know how you could have found my home here unless you were guided by my wife who left me. I know this is not the case. I would already be dead and would not have found you this way." "You really found this place by accident?" the farmer asked. "No, I believe this is my father here." Nell looked down at the mossy remains. "I don't believe it. Hav was your father?" The farmer was in disbelief. "Then you knew him when he was alive. So you knew he died here and left him." Nell tried to make sense of this, but could not do so in his confusion. "Hav told me about you. He wanted to rest his bones here when he knew his time had come. I respected his wishes. He told me that one day you would find me. I am your son, Earth." The lone farmer revealed his identity along with his name. "Earth, my son. What has happened to you? Your wife has left you? For what reason could a woman leave a good man?" Nell wondered, introducing his son to something. Good? What is good? Earth never knew the concept that was revealed to him in that moment by his father. Good is what was abandoned by the wicked ones of this world. The first generation, the ones before me, abandoned good, and so our Creator died, abandoning this failed world. Good describes the things that do no harm, but bring joy purely, happiness. You know these things if you are my son. You must know these things if you are my son. Now educated his son Earth on the most important things that were lost to the people of the failed world. I want to be good. You call me good, and you do not know me. You do not know why my wife left me. What if it were for a good reason that she left me? I don't know. Can you tell me? Hav only told me to stay hidden here so that no one would find me. Earth genuinely asked his father, now not knowing why he'd be assumed to be a good man. Did you hurt your wife in any way? I don't believe you did, but if you did, I can't imagine it was your intention, Nell asked his son. No, she was visited by her family, who often would visit. It was like any other time I could remember. You see, my wife had become pregnant, and I was about to be a father. Her family told her about Aknal. the ruler queen of the flesh. They wanted to go to the great city they called Paradise. They heard about an opportunity to become powerful, receiving all they could ever want in this world. They were only to sacrifice a child, then be given a special place among Ochnau. Before I could say anything, she was gone. She only told me these things as they left in the carriage. I stood alone and watched them leave without saying goodbye. Hav met me here years ago, and when I told him what happened with my wife and her family, he told me that I must stay here, never to go to this place. He warned that if I were to go looking for my wife and the great city, I would not like what I would find, and that the worst things would happen to me. I believed him based on his seriousness. He made sure I understood. Earth explained, "My son, I'm sorry this happened to you. You should be a father, but your wife chose something else. This is how I know you are good. What she did is not good, but you are. You are good, my son." Now then hugged his son and cried as Earth embraced his father without knowing how to react, other than staying silent while deeply thinking. Upon meeting his son, now learned of the wickedness that reached the outside lands, not knowing that all people were not truly human, but children of the devil. Earth was Now's son, and knew this without question. Earth's mother was killed by his wife and her family. To hide any information from him, in case he ever met Now. Now feared that Earth's wife and her family would come back to try and kill him, both Earth and himself. Now actually thought it was amazing that it hadn't happened already, acknowledging the miracle of being able to meet his son Earth. Now was amazed by this, knowing what it meant to be grateful. The fact that Earth was a good man proved to Now that the goodness within him was real. The goodness in Now's heart was not just a hopeful thought, but existed. Earth's existence was proof. This was all Now needed to be motivated in what led him there in the first place. From that point on, Now would have a real fire inside of him to go on looking for his other children, who were Earth's half-siblings. Earth learned of this and wanted to go along with his father Now, which was the best thing Now ever could have heard. Now was amazed that Hav was miraculously able to communicate with his son. "You were a drunkard?" Earth asked Now, after learning of all the debauchery that led to fathering 7 children at once. "Yes, I was. I quit the moment I learned of what that had caused. I vowed to myself that I would find you, even if I died trying. The years went by like a dream in a night. Until I reached this place and looked at myself in the silver water, I still thought of myself as being your age," Now admitted, which shocked his son Earth to learn this. Earth forgave his father without even thinking about it, knowing that Now drank his wine as a way to deal with things. Earth did not drink or eat any magic plants because he saw what happened to his wife's family and the debauchery it led to. This kept Earth good as a good man. Now was sad for his son to know that if he were with a good woman, there would have been a grandchild waiting for him to meet, along with Earth. This was cruelly taken from them all out of wicked selfishness by a promise of power. Greed fueled all the people who lived in the failed world. Many of them went out to search for Now, based on the promise of Ochnau, who offered a great reward coveted by all who heard. "You were looking for me for a lifetime, my whole life," Earth said to his father. "Wandering with the intention of finding you, I was lost. For years, I must have stayed in the same place going in circles," Now admitted, ashamed. I am glad to meet you grown. Today I meet you the age you were when you left. Earth said something that profoundly struck his father now, making them both think. Now said, I cannot allow myself to believe that there is no more good left in this world. This is a miracle granted to us by the will of God, even if our Creator has left us and died. Earth said, Father, the Creator is with us in everything. The people are bad, but as long as we are here, we can find the good things in other things. We can find the good in other things. Look at what I have here. As you've taught me what good is, these are my good things, my farm, my home. I wish I had a horse or an animal here that I could have ridden to chase my wife and her family in that carriage, but now I know that if I did, I would not have lived to see you. Even in the worst evils of my life, something good has come of it. I finally met you, my father. Now then cried, and saw his son Earth cry with deep thankfulness to have each other in that moment, which was brought to them by a series of miracles that were undeniable. Now could not understand why Earth's wife never came back to kill him until he thought about it later. While spending some time there, nourishing himself with all the good food and water to enrich his mind more than he ever experienced in his life, now had the realization of what was keeping them safe. Nature really was their friend, just like the spirit of his father told him as it guided him there to his son Earth. They were given a hidden place to keep them safe for however long it would take to come together. From there, now formed a strong bond with the spirit of nature that was connected to his father Hav, who never was able to talk to him the way he needed to and wanted to in the flesh, as he was utterly broken by Aknal. Now could not get over the fact that his father and son were able to communicate with each other so clearly, which was a miracle on top of a miracle, being able to find each other and for Hav to regain his mind. Earth helped now form a solid plan of action to go searching for their family. 6 other grown siblings were out there who all had some potential good in them, inherited by now, just like what was seen in Earth. Now knew anything was possible, so they were ready for that aspect of the adventure no matter what. Every day now was ready to die, since the day he escaped the call for his execution. Earth knew what could happen if they left the secret place that kept them safe, so they left when they felt most prepared. They had no animals they could ride, but had other things they could bring that would help. Animals would have to be left there at the farm, which was fine, since they were sufficiently self-sustaining like the rest of the aspects of the land. What they were able to bring with them were tools, tents, and weapons. All the things they needed to survive and thrive, at least much more than what now had all those years when he was lost, wandering that same wilderness. They made sure to go in a direction leading far away from the great city, which was the so-called Second Paradise. After much thought and discussion, now decided to go with Earth in the direction that led them south, close to the sea below the great city. They made the educated guess together, agreeing that their best chance of finding one of Earth's siblings would be in this area. People who were just like the mothers of Nal's children were known to flock to the sea as an easy place to live compared to the hierarchy of the great city. These types of single mothers could become sea merchants, instead of shunned known for what they are as old women who once were drunkards that practiced promiscuity. This absolutely was a good educated guess and led them in the right direction. The path was not an easy one and would take much time traveling there. It was not only the best way, it was the only way. This was the one option that Now could take with his son that would keep them alive and away from the people out there looking for them in all directions. The path of the merchants, as it was called, was a road to freedom for those who were looking for a second chance and a better life they could not find, as those who were shunned residents in or around the great city. Second Paradise was reserved only for those who fit the requirements of Aknau and her people. Earth had no place there. Aknau had died and was replaced by a demon in the flesh. None of the people could tell otherwise. She was like them anyway, as she became just another person who never had a place in the real paradise that was long gone. Although aged by disease, the people thought she looked beautiful in her makeup, ageless like a goddess, which she was to them. They referred to Aknau as the flesh goddess. No one knew why she stopped aging. No one thought to ask, in fear of being killed for their offensive curiosity, so it was never even mentioned outside of everyone's close family circles. People did kill each other out of fear that such a question might reach her, so this sent a clear message. No one dared mention the peculiar thought that was on everyone's minds. Queen Aknau was an ageless goddess that no one could understand. It was this mystery that brought followers to her. She found ways to paint her face, hiding the truth. Attraction to the flesh goddess was contagious. Everyone wanted a part of the power and wealth that she offered, which she gave everyone who followed her for all to see. The word spread to Earth's wife Etha by her own family and their busy mouths. They were a large clan who stretched across the wilderness since the beginning of days on the failed world. They lived between the tribes who were under the classification of people but were not so far behind their intelligence. Still, these other neighboring tribes were barely above the smartest animals who belonged to the land. When Etha arrived, she was enthralled by the mystique of the great city called Paradise. She got there with her family at the precise time a sacrifice was about to take place. Aknau's people were excited. Seeing so many people gathered in the streets with elated smiles made Etha think she was in the right place, doing the right thing. She was witnessing people experience symptoms of an altered state of mind. They were all under the influence of magic plants and strong wine. Etha arrived in New Paradise years before Now reached Earth at his home in the wilderness. Nature protected Now in his wanderings, just the same as Earth was kept safe. Earth knew once she left, there could be no return. It was impossible to find her way after breaking the bond with her husband. The trees no longer opened for her or her family like they once did. Etha never noticed before until after she was gone. Etha planned to go back for things she desired from the farm to take back to the city. When her family tried to retrace their steps by the markers placed along the paths they took, nature seemed to swallow them up in the darkness. Even her husband Earth knew nothing of the miracles of the trees until meeting his father Now. It was a secret blessing. The paradise sacrifice that was about to happen when Etha first arrived was not an ordinary sacrifice. It was not of a child or an infant. It was not a virgin woman, or any woman for that matter. This was a man who was friends with Now. Some of his drinker fellows, who would partake in nightly debauchery with their pick of the finest women in the city, came to Ocnal's chambers in retaliation. They thought they could sneak into the flesh goddess's private quarters without being caught or seen. This was attributed to the outrageous levels of courage their excessive drinking gave them. They built each other up in those nights after learning Nal was banished with a bounty on his head. "We will go and violate her orifices," was the declared idea that was cheered on. Nal's friends were demented, thinking this was the right thing to do as a form of revenge. They did partially succeed, but not without first being spotted, then botched. The group of young men made it all the way to the hall where Ocnal's bedroom door was guarded by the infamous dogs and their owners, who took turns guarding each end. These particular guards were ordered to stay there with the dogs for 8 hours without eating, only drinking water, so the dogs had a hunger at all times while in service. If anyone were to come and try so much as walk near the hallway while the flesh goddess was sleeping, the dogs were let loose, trained to rip the intruder to shreds. Then the guards would hack them to pieces so that there would be little trace left, aside from a skull and some bones that the dogs would leave as scraps. Nal's friends knew this. They held a grudge after some of their drunken friends were accidentally killed, as they always declared to their fellows who they drank with. Tired of being warned to shut up about this, Nal's friends were no longer going to be afraid. They were sorely angered by Ocnal's decision to put a bounty on their friend's head, which caused Nal to flee to the dangerous outside lands. So, knowing about the hungry guard dogs, Nal's old drunkard friends came prepared. They brought freshly butchered pig parts that they knew would be irresistible to these notorious dogs. Sure enough, it worked. The guards were forced to follow their dogs, as they could not be held back to stay on watch. The hall was abandoned for those few minutes after the dogs got loose. The guards looked for the culprits, but only one was spotted. He ran away, causing the dogs to chase him down the street. The guards followed until he was out of sight. The dogs were called back when the owners became worried about being caught leaving the hall unguarded. Coming back to the hall, they ran into the bunch who waited for the others to finish their violation of Ocnal. Only one man stayed inside after the rest said they were too afraid. Nal's drunkard friends felt like they had to keep watch, knowing it was only a matter of time before the dogs came back with those ruthless guards. Nal's old friends were especially afraid, since they killed all the people who were close to Ocnal that night, who had already finished an orgy ritual session. These men and women inside Ocnal's chamber were caught by surprise and slaughtered like the pig that was fed to the tempted guard dogs. Ocnal then submitted begrudgingly to the one drunkard man who would not back down like the others who grew too afraid. So one man violated Ocnal while the rest of Nal's old drunkard friends waited for him to finish. When the guards came back, they forced the intruders to jump to their death or else be chewed up by the dogs and hacked up by their axes. They all chose to die splattered in the street, as if there were more dignity in this. The chamber hall was very high up from the streets below, so this made quite the scene in the middle of the night. When the man was finished violating Ocnal, he came out to brag, but saw his friends were gone. As the dogs were let loose, Ocnal ordered her guards to call them back. She wanted to publicly execute this man in a ritual sacrifice the next day, and hold a great celebration feast for all the people in the streets. So that's exactly what she did. Ochnel yelled at her guards in such a way it put a fear in not only them, but most of the people below in the surrounding rooms and homes when they heard the way she screamed. She just yelled "No" first, which demanded silence. The dogs stopped at the sound. Then Ochnel made the order to have no harm brought upon this man, whom she knew was one of the drunkard fellows who spent his time with her son every night. This was personal on a level that every guard could understand, so they held her hungry dogs tight with the chains crushing their hands before they'd let their grip loosen. The next morning, Ochnel made her declaration, telling the people she had a special sacrificial ceremony planned later that evening. She did not humiliate herself or let any of the details become known to her people, especially since those closest to her were all slaughtered in her room. To get rid of that evidence, she had the other closest people to her, who prepared her food, come and clean up the mess. They were ordered to cook the slaughtered people and mix their meat with magic plants to feed to the people during the first part of the ceremony later that night, 1 hour before the sacrifice was to begin. She told her cooks to prepare the meat in the same manner as they would do with a pig, saying that there was no difference between these men and their flesh. Ochnel did not let her complete plan be known to anyone. She secretly felt contempt for her guards. The vindictiveness consumed her. With the power given to the flesh goddess that made her ego supremely superior to all who knew her name, Ochnel knew she could do something exceptionally wicked and be cheered for it, especially during a sacrificial ceremony. Until the very moment, no one would know what she planned. That morning, Etha was on her way to the great city with her family in the carriage. Etha knew she was about to give birth any day from that point on, so she left during that time when she knew the time was right. This was the speech Ochnel gave to her people that morning after she was violated by her son's friend. My people, we will have the most gracious celebration in paradise tonight. This man has volunteered to give his life's blood. He willingly came into my chamber last night to profess his dedication to me, your flesh goddess, as a gift in response to my son's absence. None have been able to find him. Now is a curse to this great city. After all these years with no retribution for his wickedness against me, his mother, we now have this man who will not replace the proper sacrifice needed, but will bring some small blessings, as it will help begin to lift us up from the curse that holds us down. The people cheered and drank early in the day. The celebration started at that very moment. People began preparing cakes with magic plants, and everyone offered their bodies freely to one another as naked people looked upon each other in the streets. Some went in their rooms and in the privacy of their homes, but there were so many careless, sensual people out in public who enjoyed partaking in every kind of sexual activity imaginable all over the main streets. This was still going on when Etha arrived with her family, who were excited to see such a celebration with elated smiles. Every face was smiling, as if it were the greatest day of their life. To see this upon entering the great city was exactly what Etha dreamed of, after hearing all the stories from her family. These people were of the wicked ones who lived among the different types of creatures that were not quite people, but not quite animals. There were several different kinds of creatures like this that lived in the failed world. They were all created before humans or people of the outside lands like Etha's family. Those people came a little afterward, and the Creator experimented with these creatures who had certain qualities they shared with people. Their Creator was able to find things out which were pleasing and became an inspiration when the idea of creating people came. The streets of the great city were lit with colored lights that shined through stained glass street lamps. This attracted Etha and her family even more as their carriage drew near. How did they do that? Etha asked, referring to the shiny colored lights. None of her family gave an answer. Nobody could say anything. They were all mesmerized, as if they had already eaten the magic plants and drank the strong wine. They were already caught by the wicked temptation that had been offered to the first people of paradise. There was no escape after the world was given over to the devil. For Aknal, this day was just another experience to add on to so many others that seemed to blend together. She had grown so trusted by all the reciprocal wickedness she endured that there was no distinguishable characteristic to differentiate this day in her mind from so many others. The only thing she could focus on was the primal need for revenge. Blood was the only thing that could temporarily satisfy her. It had to be done to keep Aknal from killing more of her own people in response to her monstrous ego, which was once again threatened and violated. She felt more than justified this time, given the circumstances, which made her even 1,000,000 times more dangerous. This was the day Aknal would meet Etha, on a night of exultation and vengeful triumph that hid her darker secrets. The two women were brought together. Aknal was more than happy to kill someone else's child, since she couldn't have another of her own. Her curse was brought upon herself by herself, and this shattered her ego and sanity, which led Aknal down the most dangerous path for her people, who were spread out all across the failed world. The lands were closely connected, and there were many carriages that brought people from one place to another. Travelers were always sharing information down the line. Aknal had the world dedicated to her, as the legend of the flesh goddess became embellished and grandiorized to the point of extreme devotion. People sympathized, knowing what Aknal went through, not knowing just how wicked everything truly was that she herself did, besides all that was forced upon her. The people didn't know any better and helped create a tyrant they worshipped. The carriage stopped at the edge of the great city when the streets were too congested with the mass celebration. The people were seen happily going on as they pleased, showing all sorts of intriguing things to Etha's eyes. Things her family saw were insatiable to them and hypnotized them by lustful desires, making each one of them in Etha's family carriage wish to know these pleasures. So without any hesitation, Etha got out of the carriage and went into the crowded street with the rest of her curious family and took off her clothes. They were offered wine and cakes and all sorts of magic foods that heightened their feelings of pleasure they were already beginning to experience. They were taken by the people and went close to the wall where, straight above them, they saw the hall. The flesh goddess came out with the man again, who had his tongue and hands removed earlier that morning when first presented to the crowd. This time, Aknal didn't say much because she didn't have to. She already mentioned everything she needed to do that morning, so when it was time for the sacrificial ceremony to begin, Ochnau could go straight to the celebration with blood.